Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and today we got something a little bit different. I was invited very recently by Frontier Developments to try out the Great War Western Front. And this video should have actually come out yesterday, but as you guys are aware, I've been dealing with some noise issues. But now is the perfect time to talk about it, because it kind of gives me a bit of a Total War-ish feel, you know, more grand strategy more than anything, because you've got to be dealing with a pretty large campaign map from what I've seen here. I don't know if this is the complete one or anything, as the event invitation was to try out what you're seeing on screen right now, what you'll be seeing for a while, and a historical battle which we'll talk about possibly in another video. I've also got access to the game once again in the demo version. If you guys like what you see, I might do some follow-ups because I'm actually really enjoying it. Anyways, so what type of game is this? This kind of gives me a Total War feel, as you do have a rather large campaign map here, and there are different towns that you'll be taking control over. Your enemies will also have control. These will be your unit builders. There's a turn-based system which will progress through the time of the Great War, so yeah, very similar to that of Total War, but there's only two factions, which obviously makes sense. This is the Great War after all. You control a wide variety of different armies on the campaign map, and you'll have to reinforce them with different types of troops. This is very early into the campaign, by the way, so you're not really going to have tanks and all that stuff, or even a lot of planes. At the beginning, you're going to have a lot of basic foot infantry. Don't worry, I'll be showing some combat off later, and you'll see that there's certain points up there too. The points themselves are based on your overall kind of morale throughout the campaign. I think it actually works out quite well. There's loads of quests to kind of boost it up, and even to take out the enemy morale too. But yeah, so moving troops around to reinforce my front line is very, very important, as you can see here. I'm basically starting off my armies. You will see that I've been auto-resolving here. Don't you worry, there's also going to be some actual battles, but you can auto-resolve if you're that type of player who just likes the campaign aspect of stuff, rather than just getting into a battle and it might not be your thing, really. It happens to a lot of Total War players too. But yeah, you can actually have armies in loads of different locations. You can reinforce them however you please with whatever loadout. Obviously, considering if you actually have the funds and the units, because you will need to build them up. You will need to wait some time for recruitment, all the usual stuff. But yeah, it's pretty interesting, because this is a 1v1 essentially so far from what I've seen. And it kind of makes it a little bit more hectic, because the enemy is constantly barraging you from all sides as they try to break through your lines. So here, a lot of these battles, I'm just able to auto-resolve and just have a little bit of a look through the campaign. Everything you're seeing here is my first look, and it's pretty interesting. Honestly, I think I played for around 3 hours. This was a tutorial, a historical battle, and then just playing around with campaign, not necessarily in that order. But what really did interest me was the fact that there's a pretty massive tech tree line. You can see here: intelligence, infantry, flight, logistics, engineering, and trenches, because trench warfare is a really big thing here, and I'm going to show you that in a little bit of time. But it was really cool, as far as I'm aware, you will never complete the tech tree, so this is going to add for a little bit of replayability, just to, you know, if you want to focus one way or focus another. It's really massive, honestly. It is honestly really massive. You can see that they're linked up into certain locations. I'm a sucker for these types of tech trees because it just gives you that feel, just like a Total War game or pretty much any game like that. But yeah, progressing through the campaign, you will get some missions, and these will help you just secure some battlefield influence. It's going to be quite helpful, as there's a lot of fighting involved, a lot of fighting. It's not just you going up there, but a lot of enemies coming in, out, and just pretty much everywhere. At one point I was just getting attacked through all the northern areas because I didn't reinforce them too well, but I did have a really good amount of fights. But yeah, auto-resolving is going to be helpful if you just don't want to fight. I did that just early on, just so I could get a better grasp at the general campaign, how everything worked, how building worked. There's a lot to go for it. It looks very simple and very clean, but there was actually a decent amount there. I don't want to talk too much about the campaign itself, as really I didn't have too much time on the campaign, so I want to talk more about the battles, because the battles are actually really fun, as it works in a very interesting system, right? You'll load into the battle. It'll obviously depend on the map and where you are, and yeah, you can start doing stuff. So at the beginning, you're going to have to start building trenches. Yeah, there's a pre-battle phase. This is kind of like your deployment. Well, it is your deployment. Your enemy will have that too. There are some control points, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. But it's a generally very large map, or at least all the maps I've seen have been fairly large. From there, you just start building stuff. You've got a certain amount of supplies. Each of your armies and the regions there will have supply. So those supplies are going to be your cash to see how much you can actually bring in. You'll start building up trenches, which are the kind of like translucently white lines. Those have to be connected to other trenches, and trust me, trench warfare is really, really important here. And from there, then you can start placing down, say, for example, some artillery pieces, heavy or light, as your enemies are going to be doing the same. Obviously, in the trenches, you're going to want to deploy troops. As your troops are safer in the trenches than they are fighting on open field. They'll be sitting ducks if they're on open field. You'll be dealing with loads of enemies firing directly at them. Here, they'll have a little bit of a defensive line. And yeah, it's actually kind of fun. You can have 2 units per trench, and you can go and take over the trenches. If the trench lines are quite large, you can have units go into one line of trenches and slowly make their way through the other trenches to hit the enemy target in melee and so on, which I think is kind of cool. So this is very early into a campaign, so I'm not going to have a lot of troops. I'm just going to have some basic troopers here and there. And obviously, since I'm just very new to this game, I'm taking my time with the deployment as I'm trying to make sure that I've got all my bases covered, right? I need to keep a lot of my areas secure as the enemy will come for me. So I'm going to start placing some artillery pieces down. I'm going to be careful and making sure that they're secure too, because they can be destroyed. Some balloons too, as they're going to help with intelligence, as there's a lot that you can actually place down, and there's more as you progress through your campaign and you get more stuff going on. Machine gun towers here and there, but the idea is making sure that all of my areas are as equally secure as possible without spending all of my supply. Keep this in mind, that all the troops that I have, I can still keep buying more troops if I have more supply. So right now I just want a decent amount there just to see where the enemy is going to come from the most, and then start building up from there, as I feel like that's probably the more responsible thing to do. I'm not too sure at this point when I was recording all the footage as to how long it was going to take for the enemy to overwhelm me, as usually very early on, if I don't have enough time with a game, I'm usually quite bad, but it seems that I was okay here. So the enemy starts attacking. I've got my balloons coming up. I've got some a little bit more here. You will notice that when the battle starts, the battle is itself timed. I'm not sure if you can change that around in settings. We didn't really have access to setting menus when we were in game. And you'll see the enemies start coming in, because obviously the balloons are adding into a little bit of a reveal for the fog of war, which is very, very helpful. There are bases. Those bases themselves, you can see A and B belong to me, X and Y belong to the enemy. A and B is where I can spawn units. Around that area is now where I can spawn more troopers if I need to. X and Y is where the enemies will, but I can take over those bases. There's also a central command, which you can see the logo in the center of the map for myself, bottom center, and obviously top center for the enemies. Now, it is important to note that there might be a few frame drops here and there. That's not the game itself. I was taking part in this event remotely. I think everyone else was too. And obviously, when it's remote recording, this was provided by themselves, but obviously connection, especially since I live in Gibraltar, where the connection is bad at best. That's all I can really say. But yeah, the fighting has already begun. And this is pretty cool because you can see how the fighting is done. I'm going straight for a charge because I was getting overzealous. I wanted to take over X, and I thought, well, you know, I should be able to do this, as I saw all of the enemies pretty much, or at least the grand majority of the enemies, coming in through Y. A little bit of fire rate is happening here, but this will then prove to be my downfall, as yeah, they've got mounted machine guns, they've got some artillery pieces too, it's not just me. You can see here that I'm just going center, just going straight in as much as possible, not realizing here comes the fire. And yeah, you can see some artillery pieces up there which are already shooting at me. The machine gun is taking out these units, because morale is a big thing here. Your troops will break, so you need to make sure that you're not just getting destroyed there. This is why trench warfare is so important, especially during this time period. So getting into the trenches might be useful. Unfortunately, it didn't really help me too much, and I wasn't really using my artillery prior, so I wasn't able to provide some support. clearly I need to go back and realize a different method of taking out my enemy. Yeah, it's kind of cool. This is very early on into the campaign, like I said, so I've got very basic units. The enemy has very basic units. If you play as the Allied forces, you do have a lot of different troops. So you've got some French, you've got some Americans, you've got some Brits. There are a lot of stuff. And I haven't really discovered pretty much everything to it, but this is how recruitment works. So this is something I wanted to show off. You'll see here that recruiting, I can make them arrive and they'll instantly arrive because I still have the supply, and they'll go to the trench that I'm going for. You can have them go onto the grounds too, but if you can make them go directly to a trench, you'll be better off because there are certain times that the enemy will target you. The AI, as far as I've seen, can actually be fairly smart when sending troops down. Because there were certain times that I did play this where I was actually getting caught out and they were hitting me from like different sides. I was actually kind of impressed because, yeah, you don't expect the AI to kind of think like a human, or at least in most cases nowadays, because, you know, video games are kind of dumbed down in some cases. But yeah, this was pretty cool. I'm trying to push up again because obviously getting into territory, taking the enemy control points, stopping them from being able to bring too much out is going to be quite useful. Using your artillery is very, very important to be able to knock out a gun platform, put some smoke around that area just to kind of stop them, right? And I feel like this stuff adds to a level of strategy you don't see in a lot of games nowadays, because you really need to think hard. If you don't, your troops are just going to get destroyed, as it happened there. Again, very bad tactics, but yeah, your men drop like flies. A machine gun tower, or well, a machine gun bunker, or a little bit of a trench there, that's going to do so much damage. It's going to take out your troops really, really quickly. I really like the battle style. I honestly really like the battle style. It's definitely something different. I realized here that I didn't do too well and I didn't plan too much, so I decided to call for a ceasefire, which is retreating. I will lose a little bit there and they will do a little bit of damage, but the idea was I can live to fight another day, which obviously is something that you want to do if you realize that you're not really going to do too well. They weren't coming to attack me as much, and I knew that at this point in time, in that particular point of the map, I did not have enough heavy support to be able to break through their lines. So in a very similar sense to Total War, Crusader Kings, and so on, if you're going to get into battles, you have to feel like you're actually very confident. Since this is quite early for me, I was not really confident. I'll be very honest with you, with what I've seen so far, yeah, I kind of like what I see. I'd like to see more. The demo itself is quite restricted, as you can imagine, because they probably want to wait and polish up the game a little bit before they start showing off the full whack of it. But yeah, this is definitely very, very cool. It definitely has a lot of potential. I'm going to show you some battles now without me talking, so you can listen to the game. It's actually got some pretty cool sounds, and yeah, you can kind of judge it for yourself. Let me know what you guys think about this game in the comments below. Do you want to see some more content on this when a build with less restrictions comes into effect? Let me know, and I'll see you all again very, very soon.
Renfort prêt.
On arrive après la bataille, on dirait.
On est arrivé. On attend les ordres.
Renfort au rapport.
On arrive après la bataille, on dirait.
Renfort prêt.
Positionen vorbereiten!
On arrive après le bataille, on dirait.
Renfort au rapport.
On a de nouveaux ordres. En marche. On avance. On y va! On doit y aller!
On est arrivé. On
Renfort,
attend les
prêt.
ordres.
Rapport!
On est arrivé, on attend les ordres.
Établissez les positions.
Attendez les ordres! Allez, on accélère! En marche! On avance! On y va! Tenez-vous prêts! On y aller!
On a de nouveaux ordres.
Attention! Allez, on accélère! De la volonté!
Attendez les ordres. On doit tenir cette position. Le commandement veut cette position.
On a de nouveaux ordres. On doit tenir cette position. Attendez les ordres.
Tenez-vous prêts. Sur la ligne.
Attendez les ordres.
C'est perdu.
C'est perdu.
Tenez-vous prêts, on marche. C'est trop. Retrait.
On a de nouveaux ordres! C'est perdu! On a de
On
nouveaux
doit
ordres!
tenir cette position. Le commandement veut cette position. Tenez-vous prêts. En marche.
On se replie.
Attention. On tient.
Attention. Feu à volonté.
On a de nouveaux ordres. Feu à volonté. On tient cette position.
Attention. Sur la ligne. On a de nouveaux ordres. On arrive après la bataille, on dirait.
On dirait qu'on arrive après la bataille.
Au rapport. Renfort, au rapport. Renfort prêt.
Au rapport.
On est arrivé. On attend les ordres.
Renfort au rapport.
Renfort au rapport.
Seid bereit, Jungs! Équipe prête.
Suppression
Tir de
barrage
donné.
ordered. The barrage.
Au rapport. On a de nouveaux ordres. On avance.
Préparez-vous, soldats. Tir de
Suppress
barrage
that
sur cette
location.
position.
Renfort prêt.
Renfort prêt.
Tir de
Suppression
barrage
fire
orienté
on
de barrage.
targets.
On a de nouveaux ordres. On tire. On tire cette position. Sur la ligne.
Préparez-vous à recevoir les ordres de charger les
Light
obus légers.
suppression shell.
Tirez avec toute l'artillerie.
On est arrivé.
On arrive après la
attend
bataille,
les
on
ordres.
dirait. Au rapport.
On arrive après le bataille, on dirait.
Rechargez
Load
pour le
for
tir de
suppressing
barrage.
barrage. Attendez les ordres. On avance. On doit tenir cette position.
Chargez l'artillerie.
Suppression
Tir de barrage
barrage
donné.
ordered.
On a le
Fire on
cible.
that position. Ouais, commandement de survision.
Attention, on doit y aller. Allez, on accélère.
Position de tir. On capitule.
On a de nouveaux ordres. On avance. Chargez.
C'est trop. Retraite.
On y va. C'est perdu, on doit y aller. Allez, on accélère.
Établissez les tirs de
Suppress
barrage
that
sur cette
location.
position.
C'est trop, retraite.
On se replie. Start the barrage.
On a de nouveaux ordres. Prends les armes, soldats.
On a de nouveaux ordres. Commandement veut cette position. On avance.
On a de nouveaux ordres.
On On est arrivé,
rapport.
on attend les ordres.
Renfort, renfort.
On arrive après la bataille, on dirait.
Renfort au rapport.
Équipe prête. Tir de barrage
Suppression
ordonné.
fire ordered.
Attendez les ordres. Tenez-vous prêts. On tient. On tient cette position.
Préparez-vous, soldats.
Load
Chargez les
light
obus
suppression
cette
shells.
position.
Attention. On y va. En position de tir.
Levez le drapeau blanc.
On a donné les armes, soldats. On a donc capitule.
Préparez-vous à rechercher les instruments.
Attendez les ordres. Cette position est à nous. À tirer.
On a de nouveaux ordres. On tient. Préparez-vous à tirer.
Renfort prêt.
Renfort prêt.
Tenez-vous prêts. Mettez-vous en position.
Chargez l'artillerie. Ordre de
Suppression
tir de barrage
fire
de
ordered.
l'artillerie.
Attendez les ordres. Préparez-vous à tirer.
Attention. Préparez-vous sur la ligne.
Établissez les positions de barrage.
Position.
Tenez-vous prêts. Mettez-vous en position.
Attendez les ordres. Mettez-vous en position.
Rechargez.
On tient cette position.
Équipe prête. Tir de
Suppression
barrage ordonné.
fire ordered.
Feu.
Start the barrage.
On a de nouveaux ordres.
Attention.
Ouais, position est à nous. Attention, on peut pas gagner. Tenir cette position sur une ligne.
Préparez-vous, soldats. Chargez les
Light
obus cette
suppression
position.
shells.
On a de nouveaux ordres. Préparez-vous sur la ligne.
On a de nouveaux ordres. Position chargée. On a de nouveaux ordres.
Préparez-vous à recevoir
Recherchez
les ordres.
position de barrage. Prends les armes, soldats.
On a de nouveaux ordres.
Chargez l'artillerie.
Suppression
Tir de
barrage
barrage avec
ordered.
toute l'artillerie. Établissez les positions de
Suppress
barrage
at that
sur cette
location.
position. On a
Fire
le
on
cible.
that position. Attendez les ordres de maintenant de cette position. Préparez-vous à tirer. Ouais, mettez-vous en position.
Attendez les ordres. Cette position
Sur la
est à
ligne.
nous.
Attention.
Capitule.
Renfort prêt.
Équipe prête. Tir de
Suppression
barrage ordonné.
fire ordered.
Feu.
Start the barrage.
Attendez les ordres. Chargez. En position de tir. En capitule. Renfort, on est arrivé.
Attendez les
Arrêtez.
ordres.
On attend les ordres.
Tenez-vous prêts. Cette position est à nous.
ordres.
Attention, choisissez vos cibles.
Attendez les ordres. Recherchez les
On a de nouveaux
ordres.
ordres.
Tenez-vous prêts. On doit tenir cette position. En position de tir.
On a de nouveaux ordres. Baissez les armes.
Baissez les armes.
On peut pas gagner.
We hold this ground.
Attention, le commandement veut cette position. On a de nouveaux ordres. On doit y aller. Allez, on accélère. On a de nouveaux ordres. En marche, on tient. Attendez les ordres, préparez-vous à tirer. Chargez l'artillerie, tirez à l'artillerie. Baissez les armes. Tenez-vous prêts, on tient cette position. On y va. Attention, on doit y aller.
Tenez-vous prêts. Cette position est à nous. Attention, on doit tenir cette position. Le commandement veut cette position.
Attendez les ordres.
On ne peut pas gagner.
Le commandement veut cette position.
On a de nouveaux ordres. On tient, on y va. On doit y aller. Allez, on accélère.
Établissez les positions.
On a de
Position.
nouveaux ordres. On tient cette position. Position de tir.
On a de nouveaux ordres. On y va. Envoyez-les.
Tenez-vous prêts. Mettez-vous en position. Attention. On a de nouveaux ordres. On avance. Préparez-vous sur la ligne.
Équipe prête.
On
On a de nouveaux ordres. Le commandement veut cette position. On tient.
Préparez-vous, soldats. Chargez les officiers.
Attendez les ordres. On tient cette position.
On a de nouveaux ordres.
Préparez-vous sur la ligne. C'est à nous.
les armes, soldats. Attention. Mettez-vous en position.
Préparez-vous à rechercher les officiers.
On a de nouveaux ordres.
Attendez les ordres. On y va. On ne peut pas gagner.